Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions, is brought to you by Newport-Fersan, Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.
It is now time for Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. And this morning we're taking a look at the importance of soil analysis in agriculture. And who better to have this conversation with than Melvin Henry, Technical Manager. Good morning, Melvin. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Althea. I am doing great. Good morning to our listeners.
Good. Wither the weather where you are.
Could you go again?
I'm saying wither the weather where you are. What is going on with the weather where you are?
Well, we have been experiencing moderate rainfalls from about 2 a.m. Thereabout. Slight wind, nothing intense, but the fact that the rain has been consistent means that you will have the charging of the soil, so you will have accumulation of water despite it not as heavy as elsewhere.
What does too much water do to the soil? Let me start there, since you mentioned that, the fact that we're having this steady rainfall.
So the steady rainfall, and as I just mentioned, one of the things that it does is that you have the charging of the soil, so the soil becomes saturated to the point where there is no capacity to hold any additional. At that point in time, you start to see, instead of water infiltrating going downwards through the soil profile, it starts to move across the soil surface. And it is at that point in time we have incidents of soil erosion. So the top surface, the uppermost surface of the soil, tends to be carried away with this moving water. Depending on the soil type, depending on the topography, meaning the degree of slope, that will determine the rate of, so it's a matrix. So if the soil type is one that is sandier, more loose, your rainfall and the movement of water, the volumes are high, then you'll have, and again, if you're on slopes, steep and gentle slopes, then that matrix contributes to the volume of soil that is lost. And once you're having the removal of soil, then you'll ultimately have the removal of valuable components of the soil that facilitates plant growth and development.
Okay.
You also have in other areas where you have the excess accumulation of water, the soil becomes saturated, then it simply means that the plant roots are unable to breathe, and then you start to have incidents of soil-borne diseases. So those are some of the challenges that, as stakeholders in the sector of agriculture, we have to grapple with from time to time.
Okay. These days we hear quite a bit about hydroponics and aeroponics, but would you say, Melvin, that much of our food is still grown in soil?
Yes, I think the last time I checked, approximately 95% of the global food production takes place within the soil. So whilst there has been tremendous growth in alternate medium being used for plant growth, the reality still remains that 95% of our food production takes place directly or indirectly in the soil. So with that said, understanding what is happening in our soils, ensuring that we have healthy soils is critical in order for us to ensure that we're actually having food security.
Now, although Newport-Fersan is a fertilizer company, you do specialize, I'm going to put that word in, specialize in helping people to determine the status of their soil. And I wondered, Melvin, is there a difference between soil sampling and soil analysis?
Yes, indeed, there is a difference between soil sampling and soil analysis. One facilitates the other. So, in principle, soil sampling is essentially the process of collecting the actual soil from the field, and this is normally done from various parts in the field to facilitate what is called a composite sample. So because you want a good representative sample or a good representation of the area being cultivated or in question, you tend to, the protocol dictates that you collect samples at several points following a particular protocol. All of that those individual samples are placed in one single container, mixed properly for you to extract what is called a composite sample. So that process in and of itself is the soil sampling component of the testing. On the other hand, soil analysis has to do with the sample now being sent to the lab for the extraction, for the testing, the actual testing to be done to determine, among other parameters, the composition, the fertility, and other characteristics of the soil to provide that feedback in terms of data, which is used to inform stuff like fertilizer management, other soil management components. So, as I said before, soil sampling is the precursor to soil analysis. So the entire testing process has the sampling first, the analysis at the lab, which is done next, and then that generates the results. So one facilitates the other.
So essentially, you can't analyze unless you collect a sample.
Definitely. And I must point out that if it is that the protocol for collecting the sample was warped, you didn't follow a particular protocol, then it simply means, just like any other testing that is done, if the procedure for sampling is incorrect or was incorrect, then it simply means that would skew or provide information upon analysis that is not accurate. So a lot of emphasis is placed in how the sampling procedure is done to ensure that we have the best possible analysis and results to inform decisions.
All right, Melvin. Thank you so very much for explaining that to us, because it is very critical for us to understand these issues. All right, so I know that you have touched on the issue of the difference between soil sampling and soil analysis and how they work, and of course helping us to understand that despite all of what is happening around us, much of what we eat is still grown directly in the soil. But what then, Melvin, are some of the crucial reasons sampling and analysis should be included, particularly in commercial farming operations? Now, we know that it should be included in all farming operations, but why is it even more critical at the commercial level?
Okay, so at the commercial level, this is where we're talking about an investment for profit. And we understand well that your expenses, the variance between expenses and revenue lands you somewhere in determining profit or loss. Okay. And it is therefore very important that if you're operating in the soil, you'd want to be making informed decisions. So we can all agree that as you move from one field to another, there are sometimes huge variations in the composition and the properties of our soils. And this is by no means a local phenomenon. It's not restricted to Jamaica. Right across the world, as you move from one area to the other. Sometimes, in fact, some of the estates that we work with, as you move from one plot to another within the same estate, you can see huge variations, which dictates that your management practices should also be different. Additionally, environmental happenings also come to bear on changes in our soil profile. So a perfect example is probably what is happening now, or what happened recently with Hurricane Beryl, where the impact of rainfall actually trigger nutrient loss, either via leaching, nutrient moving downward through the profile of the soil, or erosion, where you have your topsoil being lost and your nutrient being eroded. So oftentimes, if it is that you're at a higher elevation, depending on the degree of slope, your soil, the soil could be lost to lower elevation. So in reality, whilst you might be losing nutrient from your topsoil based on the topography, your degree of slope, someone at the bottom of that slope is actually benefiting because you actually have the deposition of those removed topsoil to another area. And with that comes changes in the chemical, physical, and biological properties of the soil. Now, one of the first and just yesterday was in office, one of my agronomists, our agronomists were actually doing a design for a farmer, and this is a first-time farmer. And the first question that the farmer asked was, based on the result, what crop or crops would you recommend? So one of the crucial reasons for doing sampling and analysis is to ensure that from the get-go crop selection is correct. So among the different parameters that are revealed from the soil sample is, for example, the soil analysis is, for example, the pH of the soil. Now, this is one parameter that very few of our farmers pay attention to, but it is oftentimes, it is so accurate that oftentimes it is the single most detrimental parameter that is either enhancing your productivity in the field or limiting your productivity. So farmers will tell you that they have been applying nutrients, they've been applying fertilizers, but the pH of the soil has this ability to lock or release nutrients from the soil. So it's one thing to be applying fertilizer, it's one thing to be applying nutrients to the soil, but it's another thing to have that nutrient being bioavailable, because until that nutrient is available for the plant to abstract, to remove from the soil, then your effort is in vain. So we normally tend to, for once you're in receipt of a soil test result, the first thing in the design that our agronomists normally tend to look at is the soil pH, because that's the first thing that would go on the recommendation. If it is that the soil pH is too acidic, where it falls appreciably below 5.5 and going lower, what it means is that your macronutrients, your NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, those nutrients become less available. So even though, and this is the point, even though you're applying the nutrients to the soil, because the soil pH is so low, too acidic, these nutrients are unavailable. So they're not bioavailable for the plant to utilize.
So we have to create then the right kinds of situations and circumstances in which our crops can grow, and part of that is understanding the soil. Melvin, we're on the break, so I'm going to take that. When we come back, I will take a look, or ask you to take a look at some of these other factors, but we're going to introduce to the conversation two farmers as well. Farm Talk continues here on Power 106 FM, and it's a Murphy's Law moment that we're having in the show at this time. I don't know what is happening. We lost Melvin, and then Melvin's phone is just going straight to voicemail. And I know that that is not Melvin's doing. I don't know. We seem to be challenged whenever we have these kinds of systems. And here I'm not talking about us, the station. I'm talking generally. We have these kinds of issues because something seems to go haywire in terms of the network sometimes. And so we're not able to get him on. As a matter of fact, we're not getting the other guests that we should be having on either. And so we do know that there's something happening there that is a little bit untoward. When we get Melvin, we'll lock him back into the system, and then we'll try to see what is going on. Melvin, I know you're listening, so I'm going to suggest that you call through and see if you can get through. We're not getting through to you at all. Your phone is ringing straight to voicemail. And so the numbers to call are 876-922-4112, 876-922-4113, 876-922-4114, 876-922-4115. And because the show must go on, we're also just generally opening up the phone lines to you. So if you want to call us and tell us what is happening in your neck of the woods, please feel free to do so. We have lost our guest, not getting him back. So we're going to open the phone lines, and once we get him back, we will put him back into the system so we can continue our conversation with him. And so those numbers are 876-922-4112, 876-922-4113, 876-922-4114, 876-922-4115. You can send us a WhatsApp or text message, 876-279-8598. That's 876-279-8598. Follow us and message us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook at Power 106 FM, Instagram at Power 106_876, and we're on X at Power 106 FM JA. You can listen to us on our website at go-jamaica.com or download the Power 106 FM app or the One Spot Media app so you can take us with you wherever you go. So we welcome every opportunity to speak with you. We are concerned, as well we should be, about Tropical Storm Raphael. And according to the last bulletin, the latest bulletin from the Met Office, which was issued at 5 this morning, Tropical Storm warning remains in effect for the entire island. This as Tropical Storm Raphael moves close to the southern coastline and strengthens. And this means that tropical storm conditions, including strong winds, heavy rainfall, and minor coastal flooding, are expected this morning. At 4, the center of Tropical Storm Raphael was located near latitude 17.0 degrees north, longitude 78.0 degrees west. This is about 170 kilometers or 105 miles southwest of Kingston, 88 kilometers or 55 miles south of Treasure Beach, and 130 kilometers or 80 miles southeast of Negril Point, Jamaica. Now, what is worrying about this particular system is that the southern coast of the island is being impacted by heavy winds and rain. And so we really have to be concerned because of what is going on with the system and those areas that were hard hit before. Melvin?
I'm back, Alfie.
Good. I'm very happy to get you back. I know that sometimes the phone system can go haywire, but we're happy that we are at least able to get you back. We've been having some challenges getting through to the two farmers that should be on as well, but we continue to try. Before we go,
we lost power for a bit, and the services, cell services.
Yes. I do understand. So I know it had to be something because the phone was going straight to voicemail.
Yeah.
All right. So you are walking us through some of the crucial reasons why soil sampling and analysis should be included in all commercial farming operations, nutrient management, soil health assessment. What about crop selection? Melvin?
I didn't hear another part of what you said.
Oh, I was asking, what about crop selection and issues such as environmental protection? How important are these in terms of soil sampling and analysis?
Very important, as you mentioned, Altier. And one of the things that we do as a responsible company is that we impress on our farmers to ensure that there's adequate attention being paid to the monitoring of soil health. So from the sampling and analysis, we're in a position to make decisions as well as it relates to ensuring that we facilitate the development and maintain the health status of our soils. For example, based on where some of our farmers are operating, especially those operating on our bauxitic soil types, there is the tendency for us to have higher than we would like availability of an element that is referred to as a heavy metal, aluminum. Now, the danger with this element is that once it is bioavailable, once the plant is able to abstract a lot of this nutrient element, it tends to accumulate in the growing parts, the growing tips of the plant. So be it the stem or the prevents the plant from actually having cell division taking place. So you'll see your plant established, but it's not growing at the rate it should. Now, what the soil analysis does is that once we test for aluminum, once it's above a certain threshold where it becomes dangerous, then we are able to take an informed decision in terms of a response. So what we normally do, because the availability of aluminum is normally based on the pH of the soil. So the more acidic your soil becomes, the more soluble that element becomes, and therefore the plant is able to abstract it from the soil, causing the issues as it relates to growth and ultimately the productivity of the crop. And so from that standpoint of maintaining soil health, and just using this element as an example, this is one other important component. If we look at nutrient management, which is the one I probably reserve for last, which is the obvious. If you're producing commercially, you want to know what the status of the required inputs are. So there are several nutrient elements that are required to ensure that the plant grows and develops and produce as desired. Now, whilst there is the issue of deficiency, where a particular nutrient is in short supply, and the plant doesn't have access to adequate supply of, let's say, potassium, it has an implication as it relates to the productivity of the plant. It should also be understood that the flip side is if you apply too much potassium, your net result could be the same as you not having adequate potassium. So there is deficiency,
yes.
And on the other end of the spectrum, there's what we refer to as toxicity,
yes.
Because you could apply a particular nutrient to the point where it becomes deleterious or bad for the health and the growth and the well-being of the plant.
Wow, that is what you say, too much of one thing, good for nothing.
Exactly, good phrase.
All right, we're on the break, and we have managed to get Kurt on, so we will have Kurt Stout joining us in just a bit when we come back from the break. All right, so we're into the final segment of Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions. This morning we're discussing the importance of soil analysis in agriculture. Melvin Henry has told us that approximately 95% of the world's food production still happens in our soils, and this despite alternative methods such as hydroponics and aeroponics. And he says that it is very critical that we understand what is going on in our soil because, of course, you're talking about making the right choices all around. It's about protecting your investment. Now, we have with us one farmer who has made use of the opportunity to do that sample and get that analysis done. And it is Kurt Stout out of Manchester. Mr. Stout, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the show. How are things over there where you are? Which section of Manchester are you in, first of all?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, in cool Manchester, Mandeville, which is a little extra cold now because of all this weather.
Oh, yes, I quite understand that. I'm from those parts, so I know as the rain falls and down, there feels a little wintry. Yeah.
Yes, and the fog rolls in.
Yes. What kinds of crops do you grow?
Currently, sweet pepper, Scotch bonnets, and sorrel.
Okay. Now, how did you get into the act of using the results from soil analysis to determine what is required to produce the best crop in terms of your peppers, your soil, etc.?
Funny enough for me, and thank you first and for all you've done to assist in my growth so far in agriculture. So one, I represent Raised Beds Farms, which is the business I run. So for me, entered farming about 3 years ago, went through the process of scaling up and never had issues with the land. Then I scaled up my business 3x, and the property I put it on, I couldn't understand no matter how I treated it, no matter what happened, the plants were stunted.
Wow.
My agronomist, Sajay Jones, he came in. I've never done a soil test because the persons who taught me farming traditionally use the normal Jamaican method.
Right.
Look at how the land is, might amend it with manure, but nothing specific. What came back for that property I had, which was about 3 acres of sweet pepper, was that the pH was too high, which was what, as they would say, would stop it from getting nutrients. So burial actually came through, destroyed those fields completely, and we're now in the process of replanting. Now, what I can say, what the soil test came back and showed that separate from the nutrients, as I said before, we had a high pH. So Sajay Jones recommended soilph, which will have dropped the pH, and I'm now 6 weeks into planting, and you can already see the clear difference. The plants are at least 60% of the height at 6 weeks as the old plants were at 9 months.
Wow.
So definitely seeing a difference there already. I haven't begun reaping, but just in foliar development, stem development, just how the plant is moving, already seen a success in just doing a soil test. So for me, I now learn no matter what I'm doing, I always do my soil test just to see what's there so I can manage better.
And I would imagine that this is impacting not only your cost of production, but also as you're already seeing your productivity levels.
Yes. So cost of production, if I'm being fair, the sulfur, so if I'm looking at just tomato, previous go, it's not a heavy increased cost of production, which I'm honestly glad at. The sulfur, and I don't think it cost me over 40,000 to do my entire land that I have with it. But where I hope to see it is productivity, as you're saying. I mean, I haven't started reaping as yet, but just looking at the development cycle, because again, I mean, if you want to really succeed in agriculture, I'm realizing more and more you have to keep your records. Just based on how the plant is pacing at 6 weeks compared to the field I had before for almost a year, I'm way ahead of the curve. So the hope now is, as you said, is that for my yield to increase now. But cost-wise, to be honest with you, applying the sulfur-and product didn't cost. In comparison to what my entire field cost, it's probably a 3-5% uptick. So the hope now is to see that result in the productivity.
All right, and my final question for you, what advice do you offer to fellow farmers on the issue of soil analysis and the use of special fertilizer recommendation? Because I know Sajay would have also said to you, this is what you need to use.
I would say go with it. Nothing against Fersan, love Fersan, but in all things, ask for opinions. Fersan has a lot of good products, a lot of information. I can say to you, when you speak to one of the agronomists, you really feel educated. But for the soil test, I'd say everyone, make it standard. For me, now I'm about to put down another plot with Scotch bonnet, and Sajay is helping me again to do another soil test. I've realized that whether you think the soil looks good, whether it's nice and fluffy, it has worms, if it looks like it has good microorganisms regardless, do your soil test, because if you know what is there, at the very least you can prepare better. And for me, so far, it's now a standard part of it. It's better you know than don't know.
All right. And Kurt, thank you so very much. I do hope that you get through this very wet period unscathed, given what happened with Hurricane Beryl earlier.
Same here. As long as the wind is okay, I'm good. Water I can manage. Wind is the problem.
All right. Thank you so very much. Kurt Stout, farmer out of Manchester. And let us get back to Melvin. Melvin, Kurt articulated very well the challenges that he would have had and of course, encouraging other farmers. So this is very important. This is critical. The soil analysis, the soil sampling and analysis. Melvin? I think we have lost Melvin again. All right, we're going to try to get him back. But, of course, we do recognize that these challenges are not his doing. I suspect he might have had another power outage, and that is what is impacting the call at this time, but he has already shared some critical information with us about the direction in which we should go, some crucial reasons why soil sampling and analysis should be included. For example, nutrient management, soil health assessment, crop selection, environmental protection, long-term planning, and precision agriculture. So getting it right is important. Melvin, again, I think you have a power outage based on what happened with you before. If you're able to, if the power comes back and you're able to call us and tell us, call you back, we will do that in just hopefully a matter of minutes before we're making our way out of here. But this is critical information that Melvin has shared. And you would have heard Kurt Stout talking about the pH level in his soil. That is something that Melvin mentioned. Depending on the plant that the crop that you're putting into the ground, you have to focus. Well, you have to focus on it anyway. But of course, we know that some plants will do better in at higher levels of alkalinity than others, and it's the same for the pH. So it depends on what is going on, what kind of plant you have, and of course, very importantly, making sure that you're getting that soil sampling and analysis done so you understand exactly what is happening with the soil. Notice what Kurt said. Even though he had put in place a particular crop, he's moving to another crop, and he's going back to doing a soil sampling. So the earlier one, he would have had to make some adjustments, and he is now going to put a different crop in, and he is doing the sampling again, so he gets a better sense of what is going on with the issues having to do with the soil. By the way, we do have a little bit of time left. We really are trying to squeeze the issues in, squeeze in the information before we get out of here. I think Melvin is trying to call us back. So we're trying to see if we can get him back as well. 876-922-4112, 876-922-4113, 876-922-4114, 876-922-4115. Those are the numbers to call if you want to engage us in conversation. And believe you me, we do look forward to engaging you in conversation. We want to remind you that you are not to do anything foolish in it. Silly says no jumping into the gully, no playing football near the gully, nothing at all that will get you into trouble. And we recognize that flooding is a major problem in many areas across this country of ours, and we no driving through those flooded fords. I don't know. Stop and think before you do these kinds of things, because we don't want to lose anyone as a result of these actions and activities. It is very important. I think we'll have to do a part 2 with Melvin, because we have been trying to get him back. We're not getting him back, and I know that we are having to make our way out of here shortly. Coming up after the news, we will have a morning agenda, and today is Tuesday, so we should have Jody on. Yes, Jody should be on. And of course, she will be, I know that 2 things that she's covering this morning, the U.S. election and the weather. I know that those issues are going to be prominent in her conversations this morning, so you can listen out for that. Throughout the day, we will be giving you as much information as we can about this weather system, Raphael, and hopefully we will be reporting more good news than bad about it, because you would have done what needed to be done. Coming out of Hurricane Beryl, you would have gone and you'd have done the trenching, you would have done all of the preparations so that you will not be as severely impacted by this system. Again, our friends that are on the southern end of the island, we know that this is challenging for you. Let us Melvin is back up, so let me squeeze him in for another minute. He's saying that his system is back. Again, he lost power, and this is what is creating the challenges with him. So we're going to try to get him back in and just give him a minute. So let me just use the opportunity before we get Melvin back to say a big thank you to Denise Pinnock at the controls here in the studios of Power 106 FM, and to you for having come to us. And let me just go back to Melvin now to quickly wrap. Melvin, you have about 40 seconds.
Okay, so just to say within 40 seconds, to impress on our farmers, we need to get the soils tested. And in terms of this conversation, it's one that we continue to have. And like Kurt said just now, in Manchester, Sir J. Jones have been very instrumental with not only Kurt South, but several other farmers in St. Elizabeth and Manchester. And they're reaping the rewards of having a system in place where you're operating from a premise of what you know. Anything outside of that represents a guesswork, and once you're doing an investment, the least guessing that you have to do enhances your chances of being profitable at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you so very much, Melvin. We're clearly going to have to do a part 2 of this.
Absolutely.
So we look forward to that. Thanks much.
Okay.
All right. A quick word from our sponsors, and then we really have to wrap.
Fersan in the Field, Real Issues, Real Solutions, is brought to you by Newport-Fersan Jamaica Limited, the first on the land.